Hi IB students, I'm a May 2023 student and I'm going to be breaking down some basics and some study tips for business management higher level. Now, business management higher level has been a subject that I have struggled with. In my first year of IB, I failed actually one of paper 2. So I got like under 50%. I think that since the band marks are quite demanding in business, I think I ended up getting like a 3. I don't remember exactly, but essentially I failed. And now I've been consistently scoring 6s. So I think that I have somewhat of an effective technique to boost your score if you are in a similar position. Now I'm going to be breaking down the syllabus that was first assessed in 2016, and it's still applicable to May 2023, which is the exams that I'm going to be taking. Now, the syllabus is going to shift for May 2024. However, it is somewhat similar in some aspects, and since I'm more familiar with my syllabus and I'm not a teacher, I don't want to spread any misinformation. I'm going to be breaking down my syllabus. But I think that there are going to be a few takeaways, even if you are a May 2024 student. Okay, so let's get started. Firstly, there's an external assessment portion. These are like the exams you take on the day itself. So there's paper 1 and there's paper 2. Now, paper 1 is based on a case study issued in advance. Usually like 1 month in advance. I don't know the exact timeline, but they give it to you in advance. You're basically seeing the case study that they're giving you, so that's a huge advantage that you have. So the first thing I would recommend is ensuring you get a 7 in paper 1. Even if you do badly in paper 1, since both of them weigh similar amount. Paper 1 does weigh slightly less. As you can see, it's 35%. Meanwhile, paper 2 is 40%. However, it's very similar. So if you get a 7 in paper 1, since you're not going to be able to see the case studies they test you on in paper 2 in advance, if you get a lower score, you get nervous, whatever, even if anything bad happens, you still have your paper 1 mark assured, which is going to boost your average score. So what I would suggest is getting really, really familiar with the case study you're going to be given in advance. You can even make up an exam paper. There are many online available. Many tuition centers or other schools, they release like mock exams that they have created based on the case study. However, I would suggest getting to know the business they give you really in depth, as if it's try to explain it to like any family members you have or any friends. You have to know it like the back of your hand. You have to know it really, really well. Now, let's just break down paper 1. So section A, students answer 2 of 3 structured questions. So that means that you're going to have 3 types of questions, and you just choose 2. So don't spend an error that I did was that I spent too much time planning for the 3 questions, what I was going to answer. If you immediately don't know how to answer one, just cancel it off. Forget about it completely. Just do it quickly, because usually section A is the easiest, because it's not based on any new information. It's just based on what you've seen in advance. Now, moving on, section B, students answer 1 compulsory structured question primarily based on the additional stimulus material. So this means that besides the case study that you've already seen, you're going to get new information added on. So they might tell you about a new problem related to the organization, or like a new growth strategy, something like that. And you're going to have to answer a compulsory question, which is 20 marks. So this is double of section A. Now, section C, students will have to answer 1 compulsory extended response question primarily based on the additional stimulus material. So this means that you just have to they're going to give you more information about the case study, and this question is worth 20 marks, so this is really, really important. Now, the difference between section B and section C is that the section B, usually it's a single question, and that single question is worth 20 marks. So what do I recommend when you start your paper? Start with either section A or section C. Section A, the benefit of starting is that it's easy marks. okay? Because it's going to be they're going to ask you explain how this business should whatever, like how they should make a business plan, or how they are achieving economies of scale. So the good thing about section A, is that it's easy. Section C, what's important is that it's a single question. It's worth 20 marks. If you don't have time to finish your exam in section B, there's several sections within section B. So it's like A1, B. So even if you miss out on a question, you're still not going to lose the entire 20 marks. But if you start with section A, section B, and then you don't have enough time for section C, you're going to lose many, many marks because it's a single question, which is 20 marks. Sometimes there's two portions, but I've seen that a lot of the past year questions, it's just like a single question that's worth 20 marks. So either start with section A because it's easy marks, or section C, which is like the difficult question, and it's one question and it's worth a lot. Okay, so whatever you think is easiest, you start with that. And then section B, you leave it to the end. However, you do need to read the stimulus that they give you in section B, even if you don't answer the section B question at the beginning, because you can use that stimulus when you're answering section C. Okay, let's move on to paper 2. Now, paper 2, section A, you're going to have to answer one of two structured questions. Now, in paper 2, you're not going to get the case study in advance. So this business might be completely new to you, like most likely. Okay, so this is worth, again, same as paper 1, it's worth 10 marks. Next, students will have to answer 2 of 3 structured questions based on the stimulus. Now, as you can see, a lot of the IB businesses section, for paper 2, section B and section C, you have the option of choosing. In section C, you choose one of 3 extended responses primarily based on 2 concepts that underpin the course. So there's a lot of liberty for how you do your exam. So you really have to use your strengths. If you know that you don't know a certain part of the syllabus, for example, if you get in section A something about finance, something about a balance sheet, and you don't know anything about it, and the other option you have is to do a break-even analysis, and you're very familiar with break-even, choose break-even. Don't choose your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. And it's better to be strong at one thing and then slightly weaker at another than to be average in everything, because you're going to have the option of choosing. So take advantage of that. Now, this is all my advice. I don't claim to be a teacher. I'm a student. So all this advice has worked for me, but it may not work for you. So just keep that in mind, please. Now, in the last part of section C, it's going to be quegis or gekis, however you say it in your school. Certain schools say it differently. We say in my school quegis. So this is focusing on the certain IB business concepts, which I'm going to break down now. Before that, just know that you are going to be given 3 quegis questions, and it's worth 20 marks. This section C, you can plan before your exam. So I would also recommend, when you begin your exam, starting with section C. Now, since section C is 20 marks, that's a huge percentage of your paper 2. So I'm going to be breaking that down shortly. Let me just quickly summarize the internal assessment. Now, the internal assessment is worth 25% of your grade if you're in higher level, so that's quite a lot. So you have to write, students should research report on an issue facing an organization or a decision to be made by an organization or several organizations, and it's maximum 2,000 words, 25 marks. Now, for your internal assessment, you should really try to do as many drafts as you can to show your teacher, because it's going to be really useful when to score well in your internal assessment, since that can guarantee essentially a quarter of your grade. So don't take your internal assessment lightly. And the good thing about it is that it's actually kind of fun in a sense that you get the liberty to choose an organization that you like or that you'd like to work with. Now, for HL, the internal assessment is, in my opinion, much more demanding because you need to base most of your findings on your primary sources. Now, I'm going to explain what a primary source is. Okay, here it is. Sorry, that took a while to find. Let's just read the requirements. HL students are required to design and undertake research that either addresses an issue facing a business organization or a range of organizations, or analyze a decision to be made by a business organization. Okay, so it's just saying that you have to choose an organization, and it says to select a real business organization. So please don't don't invent an organization. Actually choose one that exists, maybe one in your local area or one that your parent or guardian works for. Now, a requirement that differentiates the internal assessment for higher level students and standard level students is that higher level students need to base their research project on primary research. Now, what is primary research? This means that you have essentially created the research. So what is primary research? Things like surveys, focus groups, interviews that you have conducted with management of the organization of your choice. So that is primary research. So you can, of course, substantiate your research with sources you find online, like newspaper articles or any financial data. However, primary research should be where you draw the majority of your conclusions. Okay, so this is basically a structure. You need a title, that needs to be framed as a question, a research proposal, etc. Okay, so you should really read the guide based on this. It's quite easy to understand, so I'm not going to be breaking down this part. This part is essential because they tell you how to structure it already. So you need a title page, acknowledgements page. Acknowledgements is like, I would like to thank my teacher, my parents for the support, blah, blah, blah. A contents page. So this can help because one of the criteria they assess is your structure. So it's like how it's written. So that if you follow this structure, you'll likely score well for criterion G structure. Okay, so I hope you haven't understood so far what I've explained. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. And now I'm going to be moving on to Quegis. Now, this is an excellent book. It's called 50 Excellent Quegis Essays by Alric Chong and Louis Johnston Walker. You can easily download this book online, or you can purchase it on Amazon or other websites. Now, this book is the holy grail. When I found this, I felt as if I was saved by the gods. I was blessed by the IB gods because this book is amazing. Now, what does this book do? So this book basically gives you 50 examples of students who have scored really high scores for the Quegis, which is section C of your paper 2, 20 marks out of 70. And it gives you examples of students who have scored really well and what are the sections that have any room for improvement of their essays or what they did well. So my most essential tip and the biggest takeaway you need to take away from this video is that for what has worked for me personally, especially for Quegis, is to base the structure of your essays on other people's successes. So don't copy someone's essay, but the way they write it, you can learn a lot from that on how you can apply it to your own essay. So for higher level, okay, Quegis is 20 marks as I've said before, and since paper 2 has a 35% weightage, these authors have calculated that it's going to be 10% of your paper 2 grade. So it's a big percentage, and it's even more for standard level. It's 18%. So it's really important that you prioritize this, especially because you can plan it before your exam. Now, these are the mnemonic devices that these authors use. So this is going to help you understand how they're examining these essays. It's K, which stands for knowledge and conceptual understanding. Application, A. Reasoned arguments, R. Structure, S. Individuals and societies, I. Okay? Now, these examiners recommend that you have approximately 30 minutes under exam conditions. So they recommend you take 30 minutes to write your essay, okay? So you have to decide what works best for you. For me, I like to start my paper 2 with Quegis because I know that if I've practiced it beforehand, I can get an assured 20 marks or at least like 18 marks. Now, what this stands for, all this knowledge and this Carsi, or you can remember it by saying Cersei. I don't know if any of you have seen Game of Thrones, but you can just remember the criteria for IB by this mnemonic device, Cersei. So this knowledge and understanding is basically what we've broken down before, the criteria for your paper 2, paper 2. Now, let's try to find the criteria because it's lost in here somewhere. Okay, here it is, section C, criteria. So this is just the criteria, so you should read through it thoroughly. So knowledge and understanding, to get a 4, you need a good understanding of both of the given concepts. So whatever concept they give you in the question, you need to show good understanding. Now, how do you show good understanding? Easily by defining the concept. So they tell you culture and ethics, define culture, define ethics. And the business management content selected is relevant, sufficient, and well explained. So if you're talking about ethics or whatever, don't start talking about things that are completely unrelated to it. However, usually you can relate everything to everything in business. Now, the second criterion B, to get full marks, make sure that the given concepts and relevant business management content are applied well to examine the situation and issues of the real world organization. So this is basically how will you apply what you learn in class to the organization of your choice. So it's applicability. That's why the authors of the book name it A. Now, reasoned arguments. So this basically means that your arguments are justified. So you're not just saying the organization failed because they didn't transfer. They didn't start transferring their sales online, or they didn't start using e-commerce. Okay, so why is that a failure? You need to explain why. So it's always, every time you're writing a point on your organization, so you're saying like, my organization, like for example, McDonald's started using self-service kiosks, which is like where you can customize your orders, and they're these little machines that you can see in the shops. So instead of going to a cash register and saying, I want a burger, you can just do it digitally using the machine. So what? So what does this mean? You can't just state what your organization has done. You always need to ask, so what? So was this good? Was this bad? Did this have any consequences on the internal and external stakeholders? What happened? Okay? So that is essentially section C, reasoned arguments. So you can't just say this was a good thing that McDonald's started introducing these self-service kiosks. Okay, why was it good? Now, criterion D, structure. So you make sure that all structured elements are present, ideas are clear. So this is just make sure you have like an intro, a body paragraph, a conclusion, and fit for purpose paragraphs. Criterion E, last criteria. Balanced consideration is given to relevant individual and group perspectives. So this means that when you're talking about what your organization has done, you need to consider whatever they did, what were the effects on people working in the organization, on the employees, what were the effects on shareholders, what were the effects on customers. So that is criterion E. Okay, so let's go back to the 50 excellent Quiggus essays. So this is, since it's kind of hard to remember, A means this, B means this, C means this, that's why they've been using this mnemonic device, Circe, which is, in my opinion, really useful to remember what you need to do. Okay, so let's look up a 20 out of 20 essay. Now, this book has many essays, as you can see, and in the ones at the back, they tell you the specific marks that the student got and why they got those marks. So let's look up a 20 out of 20 essay, because that's what we're aiming for. As you can see, let's see. Okay, this is 18 out of 20. Let's see if we can find 20 out of 20. Okay, this is a 20 out of 20 essay. So let's, the organization can be any of your choice. You should get it approved by your teacher, though. So before you start planning Quiggus essays, you should research the organization, make sure that they have enough concepts for you to use, okay? So Quiggus stands for culture, for change, the U is for culture. That's kind of confusing because you always think it's going to be something that starts with a U, but since there's two C's, that's why they've named it, that's why they've used a U. E is ethics. G is globalization. I is innovation. And S is strategy. So let's break down what makes this a 20 out of 20 essay. So the question is, with reference to an organization of your choice, discuss the extent to which globalization influences human resource strategies. Now, so as you can see, you can choose any organization you want. You can even actually use the organization that you use for your internal assessment. If your mind is completely blank in the exam and if the organization you chose doesn't apply to any of the three options they give you, you could use your internal assessment organization, especially because you're likely to be really familiar with it. However, since your internal assessment is going to be focused on likely on a specific topic, it might not fit in with the question, okay? And always remember, you need to be answering the question. You can't mold the points you want to address to the question. You need to mold the question to your organization, okay? So look at the question and then think about the organization. Don't think about the organization and then the question. Now, with reference to an organization of your choice, discuss the extent to which globalization influences human resource strategies. Okay, globalization is one of the concepts, and human resource and strategy is the other. Okay, so those are my, the two Quiggus concepts, and specifically human resource strategies. So let's read this essay. Globalization refers to the integration and interconnectedness of the world's people, customs, and businesses as a result of increased trade and cultural exchanges. Okay, so here the student has addressed knowledge because they've shown that they understand what globalization means. So they've gotten a K for knowledge. Let's move on. It is an important concept to businesses such as Riot Games. Okay, so here the student is telling me that the organization they've chosen is Riot Games. I don't know what that organization is, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a well-known organization like McDonald's, Amazon. It can be any organization at all. As long as your points make sense and it's an actual organization, you'll be fine. So as it plays an instrument. Okay, so it is an important concept to businesses such as Riot Games, as it plays an instrumental factor in decision-making processes with regard to growth and hence HR strategies. So, since the question is asking you how globalization influences human resource strategies, here the student from the get-go, they're telling you, they're basically rephrasing the question, and they're saying that globalization, it referring to globalization, is an important concept. So they're saying the extent to which it influences. So they're saying that the extent it's important. It's to a large extent. As it plays an instrumental factor. Instrumental. Now, I really like this word because rather than using important again, or which is a really really common word that a lot of students use, they have really strong language. So that's another benefit of this essay. Now, you don't need to be really skilled at English to score well for business, but it certainly is an advantage if you use like strong words. Okay, so they're saying that it's an instrumental factor in the decision-making process. They're telling you, how does it influence? So it influences the decision-making process with regard to growth and hence its HR strategy. So this is the other concept, strategies. Okay? Now, RG is a direct-to-consumer video game developer and premium online competitive games. Okay, so it's now this student is telling me, what does RG do? Because I'm an examiner. Me as a student, I haven't heard of RG, but you can't assume that your examiner knows really popular brands either. Like if you've chosen Nike or McDonald's or Amazon, you still need to tell me what that organization does. So here the student is telling me that RG is a video game developer. Okay, and RG launched its debut on title League of Legends, a multiple player online battle arena MOBA game in October 2009. Okay, so it's giving me like a bit of context about what the organization does. And RG's emphasis on providing a unique experience to each individual player rather than focusing on sales revenues has made it the market leader with 66% of the global MOBA market. Okay, so here the student is telling me about individuals and societies because they're telling me that RG is dedicated. They have an emphasis on giving a unique experience to each individual player. So what is RG doing? RG is actually helping their customers by giving them a personable experience. So this is addressing the last criterion, individuals and societies. Now, rather than focusing on sales, so they're telling you that they prioritize the customer rather than like the profit they make. And this is important because it has led to this success. Okay? So, and this is criterion A because they're showing, basically, let's go back to our criteria. They're showing application, okay? So far, just in the introduction, we've had knowledge and understanding because he defined globalization, application because he's been telling me that them focusing on their customers has led them to be like the top company. And we also have individuals and societies because he's telling me that he's talking about the customers and the effect that they have had on customers. Let's move on. Now, LOL, so League of Legends, is a free game, and RG's revenue comes from in-game purchases spending. More than 100 million gamers around the world play LOL each month, logging more than 500 million minutes of playtime. LOL earned 1.6 billion in revenues for RG last year. Okay, now this is really good that they're telling me last year because they're giving me recent info. They're not telling me that they earned 1.6 billion in 2018. No, they're telling me current information. So this is a really good, strong suit of the introduction. Now let's continue. In-game spending is growing as more players around the world become accustomed to free-to-play platform. Now, what is good about this is that it's talking about players around the world. So it's related to globalization. It's giving you that global aspect. And now, RG's domination of the MOBA market is also indicative of its sound human research strategies. Okay. So they're also telling me that their success is also it's also a tell that they have a good human resource strategy. So let's see what he says about human resource strategies. So human resource strategies refers to the processes of predicting and meeting an organization's current and future staffing needs. Okay? So he's defined human resource strategies. So key things you need to take from this student is, firstly, define. So define keywords in the question, okay? So he's defined human resource strategies and globalization, and that leads him to get that he's showing criterion A, which is knowledge and understanding. Let's move on. It includes consideration of long-term workforce planning decisions in order to achieve organizationals. RG's talent acquisition has included the need to hire gifted employees from overseas. Okay, so it's not only here, he's basically relating it a bit to globalization, because he's saying that they don't only hire employees from their founding country. They're doing outsourcing by hiring people outside, by working with people from overseas. Okay, and in fact, RG has been named in Fortune 100's best companies to work for list for 2 consecutive years and was ranked 39th in 2016. So here he's giving me application, because he's showing me, not telling me. He's not just telling me, yeah, RG has a really good strategy. Okay, so what's your proof for that? He's giving me proof by telling me that they scored well on Fortune's 100 best companies to work for. Okay, let's move on to the third paragraph. Now, the impact of globalization presents a big challenge for RG's HR director, I can't read his surname. He attributes RG's success to the company's desire to attract, develop, and cultivate entrepreneurial teams who prefer action over processes and bureaucracy. So here he's addressing application and individuals and societies, because he's telling me what the director himself thinks about RG's strategy, RG's success and related to their HR. Now, RG mandates the use of a decentralized organizational structure by functions such as production, finance, brand management, merchandising, player support, customer service, and R&D. So here he's telling me what RG mandates, what type of HR strategy they want to be using. A decentralized, and he's using keywords like decentralized. So these are words that you learn in your business management syllabus. However, he's not just telling me, yeah, they use a decentralized structure. He's defining decentralized structure as well. So he's telling me what decentralized structure means, even though it's likely your examiner is going to know what it means. They're not sure whether you are familiar with the content, and maybe you're just putting in keywords without actually knowing what they mean. So here he is defining what decentralized structure means, and it means that decision-making and responsibility are shared with others, and department heads are empowered to make decisions. Now, advantages of having a decentralization HR strategy include input from its experts and talented employees and faster decision-making. So he's telling me why the HR strategy is good. So this points to R, because he's giving me reason arguments. He's telling me how why their HR strategy is good. Okay. Now here he says, for the employees, this improves morale as they feel valued and trusted with decisions. Example, animators and visual art designers are more inspired as they can use their creativity without the need to get artwork approved by Brandon Breck, the company CEO, or RG's board of directors. So this is a really good thing about the essay, which is that he's not just telling me, this strategy is good for employees because they feel valued. No, he's telling me specific examples. He's talking about the animators. So this is really he's really like molding his essay around his organization. Okay, he's not giving me general statements. It's really specified to his organization. Now, this does not mean that Brandon and BOD may suffer a loss of control, however. On the other, so here he's telling me a disadvantage. Let me just put the advantages in green so it's easier to identify, and the disadvantages in red. Okay, I'm going to put this in a different color actually because I've been using green before. So let's just underline. Okay, so what's underlined in green is the advantages he points out. Now he says this does mean that Brandon and the BOD may suffer loss of control. So he's not just telling me, oh my god, the HR strategy is so perfect, it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. No, he's telling me that there are certain weaknesses of the HR strategy, and that is that this guy Brandon, which is the company CEO, and the director may be suffering a loss of control. Okay? Now, on the other hand, decentralization is associated with increased costs through better pay packages and rewards for employees. Okay, so here he's telling me another advantage. There is a need to ensure effective communications in decentralized organizations. Okay. So this is good for the employees because they have they have more rewards. However, this probably affects how the company's costs. So it is kind of blurry, can be perceived as an advantage and as a disadvantage. Now, the strategy seems to work for RG, though, as it is known in the industry for having loyal workers and low labor turnover rate. So he's using keywords like low labor turnover rate instead of just saying a few employees leave the company in a specific time period. No, he's telling me the keyword. They love this. IB loves this. Keep on using words from your book because that means that you've studied. They know you've studied that you use words like this. Okay? So what is good about this paragraph? So it gives me advantages, disadvantages, and then it tells me overall whether advantages or disadvantages outweigh. So for this student, he's saying that the strategy seems to work. He's saying that overall the advantages outweigh the disadvantages because overall the HR strategy is good. Because why? Because they have loyal workers and low labor return rate. So here he's basically the last sentence just to conclude the paragraph. Now let's look at the last two paragraphs. Another result of globalization is that RG has had to operate several key servers in North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. So RG's HR strategy includes use of overseas staff. Due to the need for global communications in different time zones, RG offers workers paid time off to provide support for its employees to balance family and work. Okay, so it's giving me an example of how RG is how they know that they have people from different that work in different companies that work in different time zones. So how are they addressing that globalization? How is that going back to the question, how is that globalization influencing their human resource strategies? Well, what they're doing is that since they know that they have people from many different countries working, they're giving them paid time off to help them cater for their families and to cater for the different time zone. They also offer flexible hours. Now, so he's giving me concrete examples, so that's a really good part of his essay. Let's move on. Now, this is important as RG deliberately recruits the best talent, so empowering them in a global and competitive industry makes total sense. So this is something that perhaps if they would have had more, So they're telling me that they have specialized workers. So they have high-skilled workers because they're recruiting the best talent. So here, the reason why they value maybe HR a lot, this organization, I'm not sure, is because they have such high-skilled workers, and high-skilled workers usually they value that a lot, like flexibility. You probably know from your unit 2 what the differences between low-skilled workers are and high-skilled workers, but basically high-skilled workers value that a lot, the flexibility and etc. So for employees, they have the autonomy to get on with their work. So autonomy, keyword, taking on with their work, subject to meeting deadlines, of course. Okay, so the disadvantage of this HR strategy for Jay and Brandon Beck is the limited control and coordination of RG's employees. So here he is saying what the disadvantage is. Quality assurance is somewhat trickier, perhaps, in a decentralized organization that requires consistency in the computer animation, artwork, and stability of its gaming servers. Okay, so now he's saying that quality assurance, which he identifies as an essential feature of this type of industry that RG is in, because it's like a video game and just it's a video game business. They're saying that consistency is really important, and you need to have really good quality products. So this means that since it's an important part of this type of industry, it might be somewhat trickier since you're having all these different schedules for different people living in different parts of the world. So he's here overall. Maybe he's placing more emphasis on the fact that globalization is somewhat hindering the quality of RG products. And now, lastly, the conclusion. Now here the conclusion is really short, so let's see what he says. In conclusion, globalization has a major influence on RG's human resource planning and strategies. First sentence of the conclusion. You're answering back to the original question. So, since the original question was the extent of the influence of globalization on human resource strategies, in the first sentence of his conclusion, he is saying, this is the answer to your question. It has a major influence, okay? If you can conclude differently, and you can say it had a small influence or a somewhat of an influence, okay? But he here is saying that he has a major influence. It doesn't matter. As long as your arguments are supported, you can argue whatever you want. Now, to meet the demands created by globalization, RG structures its business by function and has enhanced its overseas recruitment through work family-friendly practices. Okay, so he's saying globalization is creating a demand, and because of that demand, RG has structured its businesses by function through work family-friendly practices, and that is referring back to the flexible hours and the paid work. Demands created by globalization. Now, what are these demands? He said it before. The demands are that the different time zones and overseas staff, blah, blah, blah. Those are the demands. And now he's saying that RG's HR strategies have both positive and negative implications to respective stakeholders, from employees, department managers, and the two leaders. I don't know how to pronounce that surname, so I'm not going to say and Beck. So here he's just basically saying that these were the two, that their globalization strategy had advantages and had disadvantages. Here he's talking about individuals and societies, on who? On the different stakeholders. Okay? So his conclusion is rather short, but he got a 20 out of 20. So I assume that the examiners liked it, even though it is very brief. Let's look at the examiner's feedback, okay? Now, criterion A. The concepts of globalization and strategy are appropriately defined and explained throughout the essay. The same applies to business management content such as human resource planning, decentralization, empowered, and labor turnover rate. So here, he is by using those definitions, he is scoring well in criterion A by defining and using keywords. So, what are the takeaways? You need to define. If you're going to be using concepts, you need to define them and use keywords like decentralization, labor turnover rate, empowerment, okay? Now that's criterion A. Criterion B. Examples are used to illustrate human resource strategies in the context of Riot Games. The candidate made effective use of fact, figures, and stakeholders of the organization. Now, he did use a lot of numbers, so he probably has a very good memory. So maybe try to memorize a few figures and ensure that they're recent ones from your organization, because that really shows that you have a lot of knowledge about the organization and you have put in the effort to research it. So here when he's talking about that they earned 1.6 billion or that they are the market leader with 66%, all those things helped him for criterion B. Now, criterion C, relevant arguments have been presented in a balanced way. For example, there are arguments for and against decentralization with justifications provided. Good reasoning is shown throughout the essay. Okay, so this is essentially the advantages and disadvantages that I pointed out before that he highlighted, okay? So the good thing about that, is that he's not just telling me, yeah, this is good. No, he's giving me balance. So that is why he scored well for criterion C. Criterion D, all structural elements are present, including a purposeful introduction, albeit a bit too long. So that is a small issue with this introduction, that it is kind of long. So perhaps he could have cut it down and maybe included something in one of the other body paragraphs, but it is a very strong introduction, and he has a fitting conclusion. Remember, in your conclusion, you're not supposed to introduce any new ideas, so maybe perhaps since he had already mentioned so much throughout his essay, that's why his conclusion is quite brief, because you're just supposed to essentially give an overall point of view and just summarize briefly what you've said before. And finally, criterion E, both internal and external stakeholders are considered and supported with relevant examples. Both individual stakeholders, HR director and CEO, and group perspectives are discussed appropriately throughout the essay. Okay, so he scored a 4 for each criteria, which gave him a total 20 out of 20. Now, the overall comment. The concepts of globalization and strategy are well explained in this essay. The candidate demonstrates good knowledge of business management content throughout the essay using well-applied examples. Examiners expect candidates to be able to explain the key concepts together with a sound understanding of the chosen business organization. This essay was excellent because the candidate demonstrated good connections between the real-world examples from Riot Games and underlying key concepts in business management content. Okay, so he's saying that the good thing about it is basically its applicability. It's the fact that he drew a lot of parallels between what he studied in class and his organization. To score as well as this candidate, there must be evidence of critical thinking. So how do we do as well as this person? Evidence of critical thinking. One way to show this is to provide balanced two-sided arguments, so to give advantages and disadvantages. When you say something, okay, what are the good things, what are the bad things? For example, advantages and disadvantages of decentralization were discussed in the context of Riot Games with justifications given. So he was saying that the good thing about decentralization was that the animators were more inspired because they get to make their own decisions. However, it's bad because that means that the heads, the CEO, the director have a certain loss of control. So those are examples of how he isn't biased to a certain thing. He's giving me both points of view, even though maybe he ends up agreeing with one. Now, positive and negative implications to both individual and group stakeholders were provided for full marks in criterion E. There was only some reference made to players, customers, although this does not detract from the overall quality. So maybe an improvement that this person could have made was to talk a bit more about how globalization has affected the players. Maybe they introduced, I'm not sure, I don't know anything about this organization, but maybe they introduced specific games to meet different player different countries' demands. It depends on whatever that organization is. So, however, since he did talk a lot about the directors and the employees of the company, he did still score 4 for his criterion E. Okay, so that's the end of the breakdown. And in the last part of the video, I just wanted to show you guys this study guide from IB Academy, and I found it really useful when I was studying business, because essentially what I've learned, my key takeaways for you from this video are, in paper 1, okay, start with either section A because it's easy, or section C because it's hard and it has 20 marks and it's a single question. So either start with this one or this one. Leave section B to the end. However, do read the section B stimulus because you need it to answer section C. Then in paper 2, QUEGIS. Start with this, please, or at least plan a few essays. You can plan essays, or you can have like a notes on your organization for the different QUEGIS. But please plan it, because it's 20 marks, and you can assure those 20 marks just by studying it beforehand. And then in general, for how do you write a good business answer? How do you even study? Can I just do it? Can I just show up to my exam without knowing anything at all? Now, I have sort of gaslit myself into thinking that business is a common sense subject, and you can just show up to your exam kind of like with a general idea of everything, and you can score well. And you might be able to get like a 5 or a 4 if you do that. However, you're not going to be able to get a 6 or a 7 if you don't study. You need to study, and if you want to really limit the amount of studying that you have to do, I would emphasize on learning definitions of every single concept of every chapter. There's specific things that you can learn. There's lists of definitions on the internet with like what are the essential definitions, advantages and disadvantages, because you're going to be using this in every single question, especially for QUEGIS. And also tools, especially if you are a May 2024 student. They've created a toolkit, which is basically meaning that they're going to be emphasizing SWOT and force field analysis and all those type of tools. So this is a really useful study guide. It's from IB Academy, because your business book. I think mine was like 300 pages. This is only 100 pages, and it summarizes everything. So let me just give you a view of the study guide. So it tells me like private and public sectors, what are the differences. Here are like what you would need to study, definitions. This is really synthesized. Okay, so you might need to know a bit more than this, but this is, if you are really in a time crunch, this study guide is really useful. Advantages, disadvantages. Okay, so they do that for everything. And they also include your tools. Here, there's a SWOT. And you also need to know the advantages and disadvantages for your tools. So you need to know what's good about SWOT, what's bad about SWOT, what type of tool is SWOT, and soft matrix, etc. So this is for everything. So that's the end of the video. I hope it was useful for you, and good luck!